All right, check the mic. We are live. We just witnessed the Washington Commanders pulling the upset against the Lions 45-31, Sam. Commanders on their way to the NFC Championship for the first time since 1991. Incredible back and forth game. And congratulations to the Commanders and their fans on an incredible win. Obviously, disappointing finish for the Lions and their fans this season.
Yeah, and I want to take this game almost side by side, right, and talk about both sides in turn, because from Washington's perspective, I mean, this is amazing, right? They're going back to the NFC Championship game for the first time since the early '90s. They have a quarterback, right, and not just a quarterback, but what looks like a special quarterback. It transforms everything. I mean, they have hit in what the Super Bowl has got to be one in terms of the peak of fandom. But number two, or maybe even number 1A, is finding what looks like a special quarterback, right? Given how important the draft is in this offseason and selling hope season, there might not be a better feeling than finding a quarterback that looks like he's special. And Washington have that guy in Jaden Daniels. He was once again incredible. So for them, like, it's all amazing. They pull an upset against the 1 seed. They're going to the NFC title game. They're probably playing a team that they've already beaten once this season. And they could be in a Super Bowl in Jaden Daniels' rookie year. It's nothing but good vibes from Washington's point of view.
Yeah, let's stick on the Washington side, because it's not just the quarterback. You got to be feeling good about the head coach too, Dan Quinn, and he continued to do the same thing he was doing throughout the season, going for it on fourth down. How many 4th and 2s did they go for and convert after that little kind of fake
Critical
tush
ones.
push? I mean, yeah, over and over and over again. They kept going, making the right calls on fourth down. Jaden Daniels, the last significant one was 4th and 2, pressure in his face. I mean, Brady kept mentioning it on the broadcast. He's not the first one to say it. The cool and calm nature of Jaden Daniels when all else is breaking down around him, whether it's pressure, whether it's just a key play. Unbelievable, man. I mean, you also have the deep bomb to De'Ami Brown earlier in the game where De'Ami's got his face covered up and it's just dropped perfectly right in his hands. There is so much to love about Jaden Daniels' game, but also, again, what Dan Quinn has done, I think, from just a complete culture shift, from a game management shift, and this defense coming good. Look, I know some points were given up, but they had a pick 6. They were hitting hard. They handled a lot of the trick plays that the Lions threw at them and forced a ton of turnovers in this one. Some key turnovers, obviously, going to be the story in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Give Dan Quinn a ton of credit because they played this game all the way through like they were the underdog, right? He was not going to get conservative. I saw somebody tweeting at some point early in the game, like, we're going to get an idea of whether 28-3 was Dan Quinn or was Kyle Shanahan, like which guy was responsible for the collapse. And the thing about that was, we said this in the show before, like, the reason they lost that game was because they stayed aggressive and all the aggressive plays went against them. Like, they just didn't get one. They stayed, I think, consistently aggressive. And Dan Quinn stayed aggressive in this game. He just got rewarded for it. I mean, there was one of those 4th and 2s in particular. I think a lot of people would have kicked the points, a meaningless set of points, essentially, because it would have kept it to 2 scores, right? Yep. Instead, they go, no, we're going to go for 4th and 2. They get the first down. A couple plays later, they get the touchdown, and now it's a 3-score game, and that completely changes it. That really, it didn't end the game, but it made it extremely difficult for Detroit to come back at that point. So Dan Campbell stayed aggressive, and that's a huge part of this. And, you know, we said before the game that to win, Washington was going to need some high leverage plays to go their way. They got some of them with the 4th down stuff, and then they got other ones with the turnovers. And I think there's a mix in there of Jared Goff meltdown turnovers and really impressive plays from Washington turnovers. The trick play, the Jameson Williams bad decision, given the eye candy on that play, like, Mike Sanders still played that extremely well. For him to be where he was, I mean, he had Jahmyr Gibbs coming at him with a running start out of the backfield. He could have easily been blown back or blown past for like 5 yards, and instead he was right there. It was covered the whole way, and Jameson Williams, being a wide receiver, like, just didn't have the self-restraint to not throw it anyway. They made some great plays on defense, and I know that sounds crazy in a game that ended up, 45-31, but Washington's defense made some plays.
Oh, they did, man. And you mentioned high leverage plays. I always call him Mikey Sanders before the half, that interception as
Yeah.
well, right? Because, again, this happens. Like the Lions were the favorite for a reason. They were a juggernaut this year. There's a reason why they were favored by whatever it was, almost 10 points. So even when a team is up, you keep expecting, okay, how will the favorite get back into it? How will they do it? They're down 10 driving before the half, and the only question seemingly was, will Detroit go into the half down 7 or down 3? How do you got to get points on the board? And Jared Goff throws an interception. Sanders still undercuts the post route to Jamison Williams. Another great play. And Sanders still's held up on the outside where he was really that Mike Hilton-esque, work in the slot, run, fly around and make plays. Early in the year, he was getting torched on the outside, but lately he's made a ton of plays on the outside. Marshawn Lattimore, you didn't see much from him today on the other side because he wasn't targeted a whole lot. So a lot to like about Washington and some of the youth, some of the moves that they've made, right, in this past year here.
Yeah, they've done a really good job. I mean, it's not just the Jaden Daniels thing, which is obviously the most impressive aspect or the biggest leap forward, but a lot of the moves they made, and they made a lot of moves, a lot of them have worked out. I mean, Frankie Louvu is, a real sort of impact playmaker on that defense. Maybe they got a bit lucky when he buried Jared Goff after that interception. But Frankie Louvu is a big time playmaker for this team. They've got money to spend to improve. Like they've taken the biggest step they can make. They've gone from like an also-ran team to they get Jaden Daniels. All of a sudden they're a contender, and they have space and, draft picks and all these things and a seemingly good organization to now propel the team forward as well. Maybe the biggest thing they would want to do in this offseason is try and keep Kingsbury around for another year, try and stave off the head coaching offers that are going to be coming, and see if they can keep the entire band together. But like I said, it's nothing but good news from Washington's point of view.
Yeah, just to reiterate too, Jaden Daniels and what they do with him, like the final stat line, even you take out the kneel down, it was 15 carries for 52 yards. You don't say, oh, wow, that's unbelievable. But the number of times, right, a fourth down keeper. Again, I'm shocked that the Lions on one of those fourth downs had nobody ready for Jaden Daniels to boot out to the right, naked boot to the right where he just picked it up. The number of key first downs that he picks up, the number of times that he just won't take a negative play, didn't get sacked in this game. And look, I think a lot of, we'll talk about Detroit in a second here, a lot of Detroit's injuries before the game and during the game certainly caught up, right? They had, safeties coming in that had one snap total coming in. I think that had a big factor, the 12 men on the field on that 4th and 2, right? They're over there rotating plays in, no idea who's going to be out there. But the number of times that Jaden Daniels just has control, man. It's just, hey, we're going to pick up 3 or 4 yards here and there and just stay on schedule and not take negative plays. And on fourth downs, either on a keeper, running the ball, or converting a big first down through the air, whatever it might be. De'Ami Brown has been huge over these last couple of weeks here. Big plays against the Bucs, big plays this week. Terry McLaurin, the 58-yard screen pass, just outrunning the defense. But again, I thought Brady did a good job highlighting that on the broadcast. A lot of that's built off of Jaden Daniels' running ability, right? The defense has to compress the box, and they're just playing the numbers game, and McLaurin on the outside taking advantage of his skills with a 3-on-2. So much to like about what Washington's done offensively. They stayed true to themselves, stayed aggressive, and really took it to the Lions.
Yeah, I think Kingsbury deserves a lot of credit for that offense. I mean, he created an offense around Jaden Daniels, and it wasn't just what he was doing in Arizona with a different quarterback. Like, it's evolved, it's changed, it's grown, it's become a really good system, and it's a real problem to stop this team now for anybody. And look, again, we're going to talk about Detroit in a second. This is not the Lions defense anymore. I mean, there's so many injuries. We're not talking about the Lions defense anymore. We're basically talking about the Lions backups, or a second string preseason defense is effectively what we're watching by and large. So it's really difficult. And eventually this was probably going to come. But like Washington, I don't think you can say enough good things about. And it's going to be really interesting to see them next week, regardless of which team gets through the other game. Like if it's the third matchup with Philadelphia, the second one was really good. The first one was pretty good for like 3 quarters, and then the Eagles kind of broke them in at the end of the second half. But I'm excited to see a third matchup of that. And if it's the Rams, it's two hot teams that were lower down in the pecking order that ended up coming through the playoffs.
Last thing I just want to rave about quickly with Washington. Adam Peters comes in as the general manager. You mentioned before the season, hey, this season could go anywhere. Obviously, hitting on Jaden Daniels was the biggest move, right? You hit on the quarterback. He is an absolute game changer, future MVP candidate, no doubt. But how about the number of role players? The number of Zach Ertz key catches, right? Zach Ertz on a 1-year deal, Jeremy Chin on a 1-year deal. The draft picks of Sandra still that we mentioned, Lattimore coming in, Frankie Louvu, who you mentioned, Bobby Wagner coming in for 1 year. Tyler Biadasz helping solidify the interior of the offensive line, playing center. The number of those moves, Brandon Coleman as a third rounder, struggled against the Bucs in pass protection, was much better at left tackle in this one. Just the number of moves that have been made that, essentially all of those pickups have panned out and are a big part of this from Adam Peters.
Ertz in particular. I mean, Ertz, I can't remember. It was a couple of weeks ago. Ertz made some ridiculous play to win a game at the death. He made the catch on the onside attempt here, which was really close to getting recovered. Huge. I think it was actually deliberately kicked beyond the first wave that normally fields it. And they almost got that. And Ertz plucked it out of the sky on the hands team as a tight end. Ertz has made some huge plays for this team this year.
All right, let's talk about the other side of things. Congrats, Commanders fans. Stick around, though. The Lions fans.
Well,
I feel for them.
As Commanders fans have been putting in the chat the whole way, they're here to pay the bills now. So
yeah, stick around, please. You guys can pay the bills now. We'll get
somebody
you
has
t-shirt
to
as well. Somebody has to.
The game started right. The first play or the second play, Amik Robertson breaks his arm, and it's come on, how would somebody just? What Indian burial ground is this Detroit Lions defense team meeting room placed upon? They've just been so banged up all season long. You're oh, okay, they're the 1 seed. They buy a little bit of time. They can get some guys healthy. And yeah, maybe they get a couple of guys back, but then they lose somebody immediately. It's there's just, at some point, there's a tipping point where you simply cannot sustain this volume of injuries. This felt like the kind of game that was coming for a while. I thought it might come against the Vikings in that Week 18 game, and it didn't because Sam Darnold just melted down and we never saw it. But if you have a quarterback and an offense that doesn't go to pieces and is prepared to be, poised and just make the right plays and take advantage of what's there, at some point the Lions simply do not have the talent anymore to stop that, right? And Washington was able to put up 40-plus points because they only have 3 or 4 capable players left on that defense. Everybody else is a week 3 preseason player. And at some point in the playoffs, that's just not enough. So I feel really sad for the Lions because this could and maybe should have been their year. They were amazing on offense. They kept their coordinators around. Dan Campbell, I think, did a fantastic job coming out of last year's NFC title game. It was reset everybody. We may never get back here again. Let's go. And they did such a good job, right? And then 20-something injuries on defense, 16 players on IR. I don't know that there's any team in football that can overcome that. And the Lions did it for a long period of time. And maybe if Jared Goff had a perfectly clean game tonight, they could have overcome it again. But the second, you have no margin for error when that's your defense, right? And that's the problem, as that eventually Goff makes a couple of mistakes. Washington's defense forced them, or Goff made them, whichever way you want to come down on that balance. But the point is, as soon as the offense made some mistakes, it's game over because the defense just did not have the capability of stopping them anymore.
Yeah, first off, obviously all year I said, I think if the Lions turn the ball over like this, if Goff has one of these games, they're in trouble, right? Or not even in trouble. They survived it against Houston in the middle of the season, but that's one way to beat them. The place where we did see this game though was the Monday night game against the 49ers. Remember, the Niners moved the ball easily. The only issue was they kicked field goals and missed them, and then Brock Purdy made some mistakes, right? An overthrow for an interception, and then a Kirby Joseph interception. It was very similar, right? They were not stopping San Francisco until basically an unforced error from Brock Purdy. Washington wasn't making those unforced errors, going back to Jaden Daniels doing a great job of taking care of the ball. and really controlling the game. The one time that they had that, what was it, 15? They had a 15-play, 70-yard drive at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Those were the types of drives that Washington had been putting together recently that we said, hey, that could be a huge factor. They did that twice, 11 for 78, 15 for 70. That puts it felt like the Lions started to play with some pressure on themselves, right? With Goff forcing passes, and then the Jameson Williams interception. That was essentially the final thing, right? They had multiple trick plays that worked. They had the end around or reverse, whatever it was, to Jameson Williams for 60+ yards for a touchdown. They had the play that they dug up from did you see the old video from 04 that Antoine Randall was running with the Steelers, where they ran the pitch and then the shovel pass, the one that worked for the Lions? The Steelers did that in 04 with Randall, whereas quick toss and then the shovel pass. Those trick plays worked. But the last one, Sam, the Jameson Williams end around, he's going to come up throwing. Anytime you see the receiver come up throwing and it's not instantly wide open, throw that thing away. And he doesn't throw it away. That was the play, like you said. Sanders still makes a great play, but that's just a bad decision by Jameson Williams.
Yeah, it is. It was a bad decision, but I actually liked the play design. I thought it was clever, and there was a lot of eye candy, and it was a really impressive play by Sanders to still be in position at the point where Williams wanted to throw. Obviously, at that point, Williams has to not throw it. Like, he's got to be aware that you can't force it. But at the point where he looks up and Gibbs has got a free run on Sanders, he probably would have expected him to blow past him and be wide open. Now, even if he had been, the throw was terrible. It wasn't anywhere near where he would have been if that had been the case. So it was bad execution. But look, there's a lot of trick plays are only ever treated. They're like fourth downs. They're only ever treated it with like a binary results driven.
Oh yeah.
It's a genius move if it works. You're an idiot for calling it then if it doesn't work, right? Ben Johnson and the Lions have been carving the entire NFL to ribbons all season long with trick plays. This one didn't work. The receiver made a bad call, threw the ball anyway, turnover. Like, people are like, Ben Johnson's an idiot. Why are you calling a trick play in that situation? It's like, explain to me, articulate for me why it was a bad time to call that trick play, not a bad execution of a trick play that could easily have worked, but for a really good play by Mike Sanderson.
I just think overall, though, again, points were put up, but Washington had the pick six. I mean, that was one of the other huge turning points. Goff, kind of a weird play. He kind of drifted into his tackle just a little bit. I don't know if that affected the throw, but he missed it by a mile on the pick six. Then he gets popped on the return. Again, I feel like, if they got Goff jittery in the pocket early, and I thought Washington played physical. They weren't stopping Jahmyr Gibbs early. I mean, they weren't stopping him at all. But then in the second half, they did a much better job, crowding the line of scrimmage and stopping the run a little bit more. The Lions maybe went to David Montgomery a little bit too much and not enough. Gibbs was the best player on the field for a big portion of this thing, and looked unstoppable. But I thought the Commanders did a great job and part of this is the aggressiveness, getting up and helping to take the Lions out of their game plan. And the Lions they have an explosive enough offense to come back from down 10. Obviously, we know that, but they forced just enough plays, man. Forced just enough, and credit the Commanders' defense for forcing those.
Yeah, absolutely. Was the pick six his second interception or his first?
They had the strip sack. I think that was his second interception. What was the first one? I'm trying to remember the first one. I remember I think that was his first. That was his first pick six. So one before the half to Sanders still. Yeah.
So one thing that they brought up in the broadcast, this comes up every so often, right? Where quarterback takes a crack to the head and then starts making a couple of iffy decisions afterwards. It's like, okay, evidently he passed the whatever HIA concussion test they give him in the blue tent. He did, however, start making some very iffy decisions after he got buried in the face. Look, I don't know, but Frankie Louvu decks Jared Goff after that interception, hit him sort of in the face mask, head went back into the turf. He gets evaluated. Teddy Bridgewater comes in. By the way, Hendon Hooker can't feel great about that. Been the backup all the way through the year while Teddy's coaching high school. And then in the divisional round of the playoffs, Jared Goff's out for a play or two. Oh, Teddy's the guy that's going to deliver this. Don't worry, Hendon. Teddy's our guy. Anyway, Jared Goff takes that hit. From that point on, like early in the game, they did get him jittery in the pocket. They did get him under pressure, but like the touchdown where he finds Sam Laporta in the end zone, I mean, that was almost a replica of the Patrick Mahomes play we had earlier in the day, where he's like under pressure. He has to bail on the intended play. And then, like, from out of the grasp, finds a receiver in the back of the end zone, got the touchdown. Laporta does a great job of one hand catching it as well. But, like, that's the sort of poise that Goff was making under pressure, like he did when he has faced, Flores defense in the last couple of games. So, like, it doesn't matter that he's under pressure. He's balling out under it. And then the pick six happens. He gets destroyed by Frankie Louvu. And I don't know if it's from that point on, but certainly after that, he was not the same poised player under pressure and did make some mistakes. And, the Lions just gave Washington too many turnovers effectively, right? It was going to be a game that was a shootout. Neither defense was able to do a great job. And then Washington's defense generated takeaways or the Lions offense had giveaways, whichever way you want to, frame those turnovers.
I almost forgot there was another game to talk about, Sam.
Yeah. It was easy, though. That doesn't take long.
It was easier to talk about, but man, I mean, the other thing, I don't want to make it too much about the refs. Obviously, the refs had a questionable day because it's another day of football, but in this particular one, I know people wanted a penalty on the Goff one, that was less of a game changer than the one that went for the Lions, which was the 3rd and 2 face mask that they called on David Montgomery. That was a shoulder, not a face mask. The number of times that we keep messing up face mask is obnoxious. It's unbelievable. And it essentially gave the Lions a free first down on a touchdown drive.
Yeah, pretty key play. I'm not going to, spend all day about this, but NFL and Premier League soccer in particular with VAR, them both having replay systems in place that are not allowed to correct obviously wrong decisions that everybody can tell are wrong, black and white, objectively, 5 seconds after the play finishes, is unacceptably, mind-blowingly stupid, right? Everybody saw that was an incorrect face mask call with plenty of time for them to buzz down and say, nix the flag, it wasn't, you got it wrong, reset the play. The whole thing could have happened before the next play got anywhere near taking place. It's just an inexcusable failure of officiating to be cool with a process that does not allow that to happen. It's like, oh, we can't have them fixing everything. Well, then yeah, you actually can. Fix it.
Explain to me too, when this happened to Sam Darnold on Thursday Night Football, because it wasn't called a face mask, they can't just buzz down and say, hey, you missed a face mask, right? That was the answer that we got. In this game today, a face mask was called, and so why can't they jump in? They said the same thing. Oh, you can't just buzz in and fix a face mask. Why not?
I don't know why you couldn't fix this one. There was also one before this was in the Chiefs game where they're like, if there's any contact with the helmet at all, they're not allowed fix it. Like, even if it is quite clearly a ridiculous call, if it touches at all, that's somehow a threshold that you're not allowed to get through. Like, a goal was scored in the Premier League, right, where from a corner where it quite obviously it objectively wasn't a corner, like it hit off the other guy, and VAR is not allowed to fix that. So a goal was scored from a scenario that never should have happened, and yet the replay system is not allowed to fix that, even though everybody saw, like 3 seconds after it happened, oh, that shouldn't be a corner, it's a goal kick. Like, the mind-blowing stupidity of that as a process continues to boggle my mind when the XFL or whatever had, replay assist, sky judge, whatever you want to call it, was doing this perfectly flawlessly years ago. Like, what are we doing here?
You know what I hate even worse is just that it's 15 yards and a free first down. That I almost would rather that some of these penalties are just like a do-over, right? Like, Mahomes gets roughed on 3rd and 2 on, it's like the Texans are like, hey, we just forced a punt on Mahomes and the Chiefs. Nope. This blow to the chest has been called a roughing, and you're going to get 15% of the field as well with 15 yards. You're like automatically, especially the way field position is these days, it's almost like you're automatically guaranteed a field goal if there's one of these penalties.
I mean, the Lions game, look, I think the Louvu thing should have been called, but it only would have taken a touchdown off the board. It still would have been a red zone play. They're probably scoring anyway, at least a field goal. And then I would say that it's a wash, right? The face mask was egregious, but one benefits them, one screwed them, right? Let's call it a wash. Then you go to the Chiefs game where I tweeted out, look, there's this giant conspiracy theory that like the refs are in it with Kansas City. There's a million memes, a million photographs, like you see them all the time, right? The refs in red and white stripes instead of black and white stripes, Mahomes kissing the official, like there's all these memes everywhere. Generally, I think it's ridiculous. It's overblown. It's not accurate. And actually, if you look at data, the Chiefs are not even remotely. They're one of the more harshly penalized teams, not one of the more generously penalized. This game, though, almost made me reconsider the entire idea. Like it was so badly officiated entirely in Kansas City's favor that I'm like, maybe it is actually rigged for Kansas City. Maybe the NFL does not want the team that they put in the crappy playoff spot in Wild Card Weekend every time they make the playoffs. Maybe they simply do not want the Texans to make it through to the championship game when they have Baltimore or Buffalo coming to town. I'm like, after the second roughing the passer call, the second wrong roughing the passer call, I'm like, maybe there is something to this. Maybe this is actually real.
In the way some of the stuff went down, there was the Mahomes had the second one was the late hit after he scrambled, right? So he's a runner.
Yeah.
This is the thing I've said forever is I can't stand when quarterbacks use the rules for their favor, either along the sideline, late slides. The two Texans players hit each other more than they hit Mahomes, and he got the penalty. And then on the very next play, he flopped too. He's trying to flop too. I mean, the whole sequence. There was a whole sequence for about 10 minutes of play, or maybe the whole first whatever in the first half. It was just embarrassing for football, I thought, because the whole sequence is like, really? We're just going to flip the field on these idiot plays, and we're going to start flopping, looking for more. It was just a bad. Mahomes is awesome, dude. He's unbelievable. Had the great touchdown pass in there. Like you don't need it. You don't need to flop and do all this stuff. I know Josh Allen. I know Chiefs fans are telling me, Josh. I say penalize flopping. Josh Allen flops like crazy. Penalize all of it. It's just an embarrassment for the game.
So the entire like week's worth of narrative that was had when Al Shahir buried Trevor Lawrence, right? Replay the whole conversation for this play. This is the play where Mahomes specifically drew that penalty and it was crap. Lawrence didn't do that. Lawrence slid 5 yards ahead of the guy and still got his head taken off. That was not the conversation to say, we really need to start talking about quarterbacks playing the rules and trying to draw penalties. That was absurd at the time because the example that people were using was not an example of that. This was. Mahomes danced around, was looking to find space and then worked his way between two guys and decided right at the end, actually, I'm going to go down here, I'm going to get hit, and then like bail backwards like that. And that's what made it head-to-head contact. That was him playing the rules. And then, as you said, the very next one, he absolutely took the piss where he was like running to the sideline, backed up, like was waiting for a guy. And then as soon as he got contact, flopped out of bounds. Like that's as playing for the penalty as you could possibly get. And I was pretty surprised it didn't work, actually. And I don't know that you can necessarily blame him for that because they'd just given him two ridiculous roughing the passing penalties. So in his eyes, he's like, they're calling this stuff really weak today. I'm just going to get me a free 15 yards. And look, I think a lot of quarterbacks would have done that. It's bad. It should be penalized, but I can't hate on him too much for doing that. As you said, Josh Allen has this like long, extensive highlight reel of flops, and he's not the only quarterback that does as well. But that was awful officiating.
Anyway, the Chiefs defense was fantastic in this one. Again, I think big game Spags showed up. I'm gonna have to. Fix your camera. CJ Stroud sacked 8 times, but man, I was so impressed with what he did. Our friend Bobby and whether it's the play calling, the offensive line, I mean, just the pass blocking generally was awful. Again, we're here in week 20. No answers for the blitz. Free rushers left and right, and then just domination from Chris Jones off the edge, from George Karlaftis off the edge. So again, credit the Chiefs and Spags, man. I mean, that dude's got no fear. Game on the line. You have to have blitz answers with the game on the line. And when the game was on the line, the Texans had no blitz answers, and they also don't have personnel answers. When Chris Jones wants to win, against right tackle Blake Fisher, he's going to win. Where Karlaftis against tight ends and everything, they just dominated the pass rush for the Chiefs. And how many third down sacks for Stroud? It was a million. And Stroud, I thought he did a good job keep like some of the tight window throws, the scrambles that he made. It was a tough game for Stroud.
Yeah, the second half in particular, like it felt like in the second half, once the Chiefs got that lead and started to lean on him, it started to turn the screw. Spags just went, all right, let's go. Let's release the hounds. Let's come after them. And they just couldn't pick it up. Like the problem is it's the combination, right? It's that they had problems schematically paired with the fact that they had personnel issues and they couldn't hold up one-on-one. So look, Blake Fisher's a young right tackle, and they're putting, Karlaftis is playing really well at this point. Also, Chris Jones is going to go out there every now and again. Like, it's just a rough matchup for him. So they're helping him out with chip blocks and stuff, right? But the people they were helping him out with chip blocks were screwing it up. Like, Dalton Schultz blew at least two significant, pass rushing plays where he screwed up his protection, like, made the matter worse rather than better. Ogunbowale screwed up as well in pass protection. So you've got Fisher struggling to hold his own anyway. The guys you're helping him with are making it worse, not better. Shaq Mason, who's like, an established high-end guard, has been awful this season when it comes to pass blocking. I honestly don't know what's happened to him. I mean, it was never the stronger side of his game, but he was fine. And this season, he's just been horrendous as a pass blocker. He's coming back from injury as well. Maybe that's part of it, but he was terrible in the game as well. So you're down to two or three players that are holding up, and they're sending more than you can block anyway. I don't know what the answer to that is. Like, people are going to be like, well, Bobby, fix it. How come Bobby had no answers? I don't know what the answer to that is. You've got multiple players that can't hold up one-on-one. The additional help that you're doing schematically is making it worse. Like, so what do you do at that point?
I mean, I'll go back and look. Well, I'll report back Monday what we could have done to fix it. But there was a couple overloads there that they had no answers for. And it's tough for Houston. Like, Nico Collins is their one threat, right? You have Xavier Hutchinson, a couple guys making some catches. Right. But the way the Chiefs play that tight man coverage, Trent McDuffie, at least 3 pass breakups by my last count. You can't throw on him whatsoever. So, yeah, it's a challenge going up against this Chiefs defense. So whoever they play, Baltimore or Buffalo, I think we're going to see an epic game tomorrow night and then another one next week in Kansas City.
And look, the chat is there being like, of course you're going to say it's not Bobby's fault. You're friends with him. I'm perfectly fine to acknowledge that I am biased in this dynamic, but I think it's a lot more complicated than simply saying they did bad, ergo Bobby did bad, right? Look at the combination of what they have left, what they were doing, and where the answer should be, and tell me what he was supposed to do, right? He is the personnel on the offensive line isn't good enough. So what you do with that is you can fix that in 2 different ways, right? We can get quick passes out to receivers, or we can help with additional with additional chip blocks and all that kind of thing, right? The chip blocks made it worse. They were players that supposed to be able to help that thing were digging a deeper hole. And then the passes that you want to get out quickly to your receivers, well, Tank Dell's gone, Stephon Diggs is gone. You're throwing to these guys that can't make those plays, right? Like, you're throwing to some guy called Jared Wayne, who, Nico Collins getting doubled out of the game, so the ball's got to go somewhere. If then your quick answer on hot routes is, John Mechie, is that who's supposed to have like a 15 catch, 200-yard game? Because that's the only way that's being fixed.
Yeah, and your blocked field goal, missed extra point. That's the other thing. Like, Kansas City, Travis Kelce came alive as you predicted, right? All of a sudden, playoff Kelce's here, 49-yarder, longest of his career. He has over 100 yards. But Kansas City starts the game with a long kickoff return, in field goal range right away. Their punt game was better. They won in special teams and defense, and the offense was efficient. Once again, took care of the ball. So Chiefs type of game, 23-14, and they're moving on.
Second week in a row, Houston special teams, undermined them, and they got away with it last week. They were able to overcome that. But this week, Kaimi Fairbairn, who'd been a good kicker, had an absolute nightmare from start to finish. That kick was blocked at the end, but that thing barely cleared the line of scrimmage. The trajectory of that thing was coming out insanely low. Like they were like any one of three guys could have blocked this kick, and none of them was like, had crushed their man and was 5 yards into the not the backfield, but like 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. Like the ball was barely clearing the line of scrimmage, and the hands that were put up. So Fairbairn just had an absolute meltdown. As you said, the first thing that happened was the kick return. Not only did they give up a huge kick return, the dude that made the tackle tosses his helmet. I don't know, in frustration or celebration. Either way, he gets a 15-yard penalty. He then tries to like start a fight with the special teams coordinator, who's like, dude, what the hell are you doing? You can't throw your helmet coming off the field. Like, immediately, your special teams unit is trying to shoot you in the foot. So like the Chiefs started the drive at like the 15-yard line or something insane.
Yeah, to start the playoffs. So forget about and they had the first drive went -1 yards and they get a field goal, right? I mean,
it's like, okay, so you overcame that and you hung tight, but like the first thing you do is to take a team that is heavily favored and set them up on your 15-yard line. Like whether or not it results in a touchdown or whatever, like you can't. I mean, that was the game where they're like, look, Kansas City, regardless of the penalties and the ridiculous officiating and the fixes in and all that kind of thing, like the bottom line is generally they're not going to shoot themselves in the foot in the playoffs, right? And if you are not as good as them, which you probably aren't, you need to be perfect, because if you give them anything, it's a free play that they don't need because they're already better than you.
Yeah, they played their game. Efficient offense, excellent defense, excellent special teams. Chiefs move on. They continue to take care of business, man. So hosting the AFC Championship next week. And is this our Monday show? Like we're gonna redo this all again Monday morning.
The one other officiating thing that I wanted to bring up, did you see the hip drop tackle that they could clip that and use it as the video for like these are the things to look for when you're looking for a hip drop tackle.
Chris Jones on Stroud?
No. I forget who it was. The Chiefs DB in the secondary somewhere. Maybe it was Reed. I forget who it was, on Dalton Schultz anyway. But it couldn't have been more of a textbook example of everything they tell you to look for a hip drop tackle. No flag. I mean, if that's not a flag, then you're literally not throwing the flag for this as a foul. Like we're only enforcing this foul.
It's like Brian Cook on Dalton Schultz.
Ryan Cook.
The chat say.
Yeah. But like if you can't throw a flag on that, you're literally saying that this penalty is only taking place retrospectively with fines.
They still haven't tossed one yet this year, right?
I don't think so. I haven't seen one.
And we probably did a whole show on how it was going to ruin the game. So look at us. Sometimes we're wrong. All right. Well, that was a long.
Had they tried calling them, it might have.
That was a long instant reaction, but it was a big one, man. Congrats to the Commanders, Chiefs, both going to the championship games. We got tomorrow. We'll see. I don't know if we're going to do an instant reaction tomorrow. I do know we'll do a long form reaction though Monday morning. So appreciate everybody that's been new to the channel. The new subscribers, hit that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. We might be here tomorrow with an instant reaction, but enjoy the games regardless. We'll see you Monday morning. More Check the Mic.